Okay, so the day has come. Literally the next day. I'm going to be showing you guys how to put this thing together for those of you that are interested in getting one. It's a very simple process. It's pretty much like Legos, so it's going to be as simple as I show it to be. Stick it on the tripod and we will get right down to it. So all you're going to need for this is a dead blow and a couple wrenches for the couple bolts that are in the transmission. These are the shift fork bolts, and then the countershaft nut as well, which needs to be divoted in order to so it does not move or back off. So we're going to start with the output shaft. The countershaft should already be assembled for the most part. For everybody, it should be in the box assembled. So we're going to start with the output shaft. You're going to want to find the third gear, and then the needle bearing part number right here. You guys can use this as a reference. You'll take third gear. This bearing just slides right in. This gear slides right on. But make sure you guys use some sort of lubricant. I'm just going to use assembly lube just for ease of use. It's not as super messy. Make sure the needle bearing is on the end of the output shaft here. You guys can see it's step 1. Third gear slides right over the top. You guys will know it's right because it's nice and stiff. Step 3, you're going to want to find this spline bushing. You're going to want to get this spline drive. You'll see on this here there's a deeper groove on one side than the other. You're going to want to put the deeper groove onto the end here. Okay, so once you get it on there, it takes a little bit, and there is clearance between this. Obviously, these things aren't supposed to touch. This is stationary. This one spins on a bearing. You're going to want to put the clamp, or this little C-clip that's back in here. If you guys look in here, you guys want to make sure you're messing with this. Wiggle it around a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't go all the way in. It's extremely tight, so you're going to make sure that it actually seats all the way. Because if this comes off whenever you're, operating, it's going to be extremely bad for everything. So make sure that this clamp is actually in its groove. So mess with it. Make sure you can actually see down in there and see that the teeth are overhanging. You can see right there on the front of mine, right down here, that the teeth are actually overlaying on it, but on the back side it's not. So I'm going to actually stick something in here and pry it down, so that way the teeth or the splines are overlaying the whole clip. So just because I'm in my house, I don't have a flathead, just a butter knife, just a little bit of wiggling, it'll seat itself in there. Just make sure the splines are overlaying the top of the clip. You absolutely do not want that to come out. Okay, so next step, we're going to flip it over. This side is finished. It's all ready to go. Don't be alarmed. There is a little bit of space between this. I think I said that earlier. Once everything's all lubed up and everything, these aren't actually supposed to be completely touching. So obviously not supposed to be rubbing. So don't be alarmed if it makes noise. As long as this clip's in there, everything's tight, it's good to go. So go ahead and flip it over. Then the next bearing, these are pretty simple to figure out. This is the biggest bearing of the whole bunch. Obviously, just like the last one, it's going to slide right down over. Here is the part number for this one, for this step. Then you're going to want to find second gear. If you guys aren't aware or know which gears they are, all you have to do is flip it over and you can fit the bearing inside this area here. It'll fit nice and snug. Slide the gear right over and right onto that bearing. It'll be nice and stiff, just like the other side. So now we're going to get the next dog ring spline. This is for the selectors. That's select the gear. Same as last time. So on the inside here, you're going to want to use the side that's open wider than the other side. This inside portion here will sit just above the splines in here. just like that. Slid right over, no problem at all. Next will be the 1-2 dog ring. Make sure the selector portion of the ring is facing down. This is what selects your gear. So this will slide right on. It'll do exactly what your synchronizer selectors will do. Okay, so just as an example of how this works here, let's see, you guys can see right in here, these are the dog teeth here. Whenever the gear is spinning and you select it, you slam into each other, and the selector has now selected it, and obviously this will spin the whole output shaft. This is all connected by splines, and this is the selector, and that's how it works. Next step. Next will be a bushing. There are 2 bushings. Obviously this one is not big enough to fit. This bigger bushing will fit right over the shaft here. You're going to want to lubricate it so that way it will slide on without an issue. Okay, next step will be another needle bearing. I found that there's 2 of the same one, but they've got different part numbers. So we've got this one here. It'll focus. And this one as well, which literally are the same bearing. They fit the same and everything. Next will be first gear. You can see, make sure that you're placing the dog teeth face down onto the selector. The other one goes on the other side of first gear and fits right down snug right between here. Okay, so next is a very, very important one. I either lost mine or it exploded out whenever I was blew out my first gear thrust washer. I ended up buying some more. I have a couple of them right here in this baggie. It is, get it on the white here. It is a little cylinder. Make sure if you guys are tearing your transmissions apart, make sure you keep these. Okay, so right here you guys can see a little divot and there's a little hole. This little cylinder guy that I showed you fits directly in the hole like so. Next, we're going to be installing the thrust washer. Make sure the divots are facing down like so, and make sure the little space or the space on the bottom of the thrust washer fits right over the cylinder that we installed. Okay, so the thrust washer, you guys might have a little bit of problems trying to get it to go on right. You might be lucky the first time. Just kind of wiggle it until it slides right on. You guys don't want to push any force on this because this is obviously what breaks in every R154. This one's billet. It's a lot different than even the Marlin Crawler one. But once you get it on, it slides right on. Slide it down over the little dowel pin that we just installed, and that will hold it in place. The thrust washer will sit flush. It'll be right up against the first gear. You're gonna make sure, check first gear, make sure it's not moving around because you don't want first gear moving. Everything should be stationary and not able to slide up and down the shaft. So far, this is what it should look like. If you guys have assembled it, the selector ring should move around. Everything should be good. Independent gears should freely spin. All right, so the next step is going to be a bearing. It's your center bearing that fits through your center housing right here. This bearing here sits right in here. You're gonna want to make sure that you don't get these mixed up. These are all different size bearings. This one is for the tail shaft. It goes on the back side of the tail housing. And this one is the center bearing. This one is the input shaft bearing, and you can tell the center bearing is a lot smaller. So what you're going to do next is, I'm actually going to stick these in the oven. You want to heat them up to about 230 degrees or so. Don't heat them over 240 degrees. It's like 120 degrees Celsius for you guys that don't want to deal with Fahrenheit. So like 230 degrees. It'll expand this a little bit there, so that way you can slide it over the shaft. And it'll seat perfectly. And I'll make sure it's seated all the way up against the thrust washer here. So I'm gonna get these warmed up and then we'll throw them on. Cooking some good stuff today. Okay, so while those cook there, one thing I'm gonna say, I paid like 120 bucks for this press right here, and there may be some things you're gonna want to use it for. It's very cheap and it works super freaking good. This is a 12-ton press. Does everything that you'll possibly need. Like, it will mess with all your bushings and all that stuff. I totally recommend getting one of these, and you guys can afford it if you're able to pay freaking $5,000 for this gear set. Regardless, it's 100 bucks. If you guys are watching this, you probably spend a lot of money on your cars. I just definitely recommend going ahead and just buying one because it's very useful to have. I almost thought I wasn't going to need it. Then I got lucky because I am probably going to need it assembling this. So these bearings probably not going to go on as easy as I think. Okay, so when putting it on the shaft, you're going to want to make sure it's positioned for this ring right here. There's a snap ring that clips right here in this groove. You see, you're going to want to make sure it's positioned. Like so. So now I'm going to go ahead, flip this guy upside down here. Okay, so that was literally just because it caught its last wind and slid on really quick. So she's on there. She's toasty because she's been in the oven, but she's on there. So let's go back in, go to the next step. So what it's going to be is it's going to be the 3/4 shift selector. And on the HD model, which all of them will be HD at this point on, it does not matter which way it goes. The orientation does not matter. I'm going to just go ahead and slide it on, and then we're going to set this aside for now. So next, you can see right here, if you guys are able to save your bearings, that's cool. I ended up buying all new ones. This is a bearing that you're probably going to be pretty easy to figure out which one it is. It's got removable center race here. So we're going to be taking the counter shaft here, and we're going to be running this on here. This falls on pretty simple. This goes on pretty easily. Just take your washer off and slide it on first. It'll be pretty simple. And make sure that this is on the outside. So you can slide this on there, and then you can slide this guy on after the fact. Okay, so once it's all the way on, you'll see right here there's a little space that you put a clip. The clip for this is supplied with the kit. And unlike the other rings that you have for the stock trans, these are actual snap rings. So, good old legitimate snap ring pliers. And just like that, she's on there nice and tight. And just like I said with the other one, make sure you're wiggling it around a little bit. Make sure it's seated all the way. You definitely don't want these guys coming out. That would not be good. Alright, so we're going to be installing these together at the same exact time into the sandwich plate here. We're going to make sure that this is in there correctly. So you're going to want to make sure it's towards the rear of the transmission. So this is going to be towards the tail housing. You can see right here the orientation of it. We'll have the groove here for the snap ring clip. So you just want to put the snap ring clip on there. Probably just be a good idea to do it now. It's not going to hurt to have it on there anyways, because you can just always you can slide it right in there as it is. So, just like that, got the snap ring in there. I'm gonna go ahead and put the guy right in here. Until it snaps right in. And we're gonna go to the other side. And together, I suppose you can install that bearing in just a little bit. Okay, so upon messing with my stuff here, when you guys are putting both gear sets together into this plate, make sure you put reverse on here as well. Like, make sure you put it on there first before you mess with it. Orientation, you guys can see right here, needs to face in. It needs to go towards the back side of the transmission. So make sure you guys install reverse gear before you install these, because it doesn't work. Alright, so next you're going to want to put your reversed shaft into its place. It'll slide right in, of course. And then you're going to want to get your billet bearing plate. And right here you can see this little indent. This will fit right into the notch on the rod here. So when you slide this over, you're going to want to have it placed like so. Alright, so went ahead and just put some bolts in this to hold everything together. One of the biggest things, make sure you Loctite everything. Everything in here is extremely important. Anything that backs out is going to destroy everything. So make sure you Loctite these. My wife is bringing me some Loctite when she gets home. So I'm just putting these on here for now to hold it in place. And let's get on with the next step. So for the next step, on the counter shaft here, we're going to be putting in a ball bearing. Right here in this little divot, you guys can see. Let me rotate it for you. Right there, there will be a ball bearing, such as this one here, that will fit just perfectly in the hole. And next, you will be taking your 5th gear thrust washer, which is this guy right here. Orientation, the shallow end, the short side, goes to the inside here. Okay, next we will be installing these guys. There's 2 of these. They're the same. They're the only 2 in the whole kit. Can't really confuse them, but a part number right here for you guys to know. And then there is a oil bushing as well. They will pancake. The oil bushing will be between it. These guys will go right on to the counter shaft. Once that guy's all the way on, make sure it's all the way up against the thrust washer. Next will be the oil bushing, which will be next. Should be pretty simple. And then will be the second bushing, just like the first one. Just like so. So once you get the final 2 spacers on, you will use the last 2 needle bearings. Make sure they are lubricated, so lubricate the surface. I'm gonna take this gear, slide it on. It's the only one left that has splines on it. And this last gear here, you will see on the inside, there's a little race. So you won't be able to put both bearings on at the same time. You're gonna have to do one at a time. So orientation, you want the splines to be facing out. So set that on just like that. And then the last one, and the last bearing, you want to go ahead and put some lubricant on, of course. And then just like before, slide it right underneath. After that, you will put on the final selector, and then the end plate that has dog teeth on it, right on the end here. And then install the nut. You'll notice there's a spot on the counter shaft that has a divot on it. It's kind of, it looked like it was cut diagonally. You're going to want to take a hammer or something. So next, let me zoom out here so I can give you guys some lighting. Next will be some of the stock parts. This is a spacer from the stock. So I'm going to go ahead and install it right on. And then after this will be another bearing. This guy's been toasted in the oven for a while. So if they say it correctly, wow, it actually slid right on there. I had to use a press to get this thing off. So it's on there nicely. Actually, it doesn't even want to come back off, so I think it cooled enough to where it's just not going to come back off. It's actually pretty freaking hot. So I recommend using the oven and not a torch because you can regulate the heat in an oven. So next, there will be another C-clip on the front of the bearing that will hold the bearing in. So next will be your speedometer gear. Install a little bearing. So you'll install your first clip right before the ball bearing. Then on the inside of your speedometer gear, there's a little divot for the ball bearing to sit. Just slide it on this way. Then install the final clip. Alright, so this video is going to be divided up into a couple days. I'm going to be back in tracking here for a second. My camera stopped filming on some of these. I lost some footage. But for the shift bars, if you guys are actually into building transmissions, you already know your little ball bearings, retainer balls, and pills that go inside here. And make sure that you get them where they're supposed to go. One little thing here, if you look, when they come out, there will be pill-sized ones. They're elongated ball bearings, and then there will be regular ball bearings. If you look at the side here, you see that this one has less of a gap than this one. The ball bearing will sit here between these two. An elongated one will sit here between these two. And then the next set up, another elongated one will sit between these two. So you'll have regular ball bearing, elongated, ball bearing, spring thing, and then you're going to have a ball bearing in each one of these here with a spring on top of them. These you're going to have to make sure you install these together. It's not that difficult to figure out. It's just kind of annoying. I do not want to take it apart again, so unfortunately I'm just not going to have that part filmed because I just couldn't get it. But on to the next step here. Okay, so rotating this guy around here, it's pretty much ready to go. So the next thing we're going to do is there will be one more bearing. This is the only one of its size. It's super tiny. It'll fit right in here. There's also the spacer that comes with the kit that matches the same width as the bearing. Right there on the back side of the, or on the front side of the output shaft, I should say. You're going to put the spacer first, and then slide the bearing right over it. Make sure you lubricate, though. Get it, and just go ahead and slide her right on there. One thing to notice is that when you guys are putting this together, most of these gears, they're all going to mesh correctly and lined up. There is thrust force for first gear here. It doesn't line up exactly. The gear below it is actually thinner than the first gear itself. So don't worry about that. As long as everything goes together fine, like I showed you guys, then it will be okay. Another thing, forgot to show you guys. Yep, heat this up, slides right over, fits in place, and then the snap ring. I think I showed you guys that in the last clip, but it's the next day now. So next, after that, we're going to stick the, well, actually, I think I want to put the tail housing on, so that way I can make sure everything shifts fine. Alright, so it's pretty straightforward putting everything back together. Both cases come together, and they bolt together through bolts, so it doesn't matter which one you put on first. The input shaft here is held on by what I showed you earlier. So just make sure you get her all the way in there. And the final parts will be installing these clips on your bearings. And that is it. I will be installing this transmission tomorrow in my car, so I'll be doing a review and everything and seeing what kind of power it can hold. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.